everybody, welcome back to our channel. As you can see, we've had a slight change of scenery from the last video. It's been probably 5 or 6 weeks since we've done our last video, and that's because we've just finished our move to Arizona from Wisconsin. So we're going to talk about the process a little bit and everything that happened along the way. We towed our RV along with us as we were making our way down to Arizona, so we stopped at a different campground every night. So we have some mini reviews, I guess you could say, that we have for you. So let's just dive right into it and see what we've been up to. So as I mentioned before, we finished our move to Arizona from Wisconsin. We left Sheboygan at the end of June. Most of our things went into a pod moving container, which is really cool to see if you ever order one. Having it dropped off and picked up is an experience. All the neighbors were watching, which was kind of funny. So most of our things went into the pod, which then got hauled off to Phoenix, long distance. So we picked pods just because they were the cheapest out of all the options.
And most efficient. And then we didn't really have to do any of the work of traveling or,
Yeah, they did basically everything.
To here.
So they drove it up from Milwaukee, which is the nearest warehouse that they have, and they dropped it off, and then we filled it up over a couple of days, and then they picked it up on a few days after we left, actually. So we were a little worried that, since we were not there, if anything went wrong, we'd have to turn around and come back, because by the time that the pod was being picked up, I think we were in Kansas. So we were halfway across the country already, but everything went smoothly, and the pod is waiting for us to be picked up in Phoenix right now. So the other reason I think why we went with pods is because their facilities are air conditioned. It's indoors, so you don't have your storage container, sitting out in the Phoenix sun in the middle of the summer just baking for a couple of months or however long it takes you to pick it up. So that was another reason.
And you can leave this stuff there as long as you want. Well,
yeah.
As long as you pay.
Right.
It's not cheap, but
yeah, you kind of get what you pay for. But all the other companies were basically saying that, yep, we will move it for you, and then immediately as soon as the box arrives or the container arrives, you have to know where it's getting dropped off, and the truck will just drop it off wherever. So that wasn't really an option for us, and I think we're going to get into that a little bit later on when we talk about what we're doing here in Arizona. So like I said, we left Sheboygan at the end of June. Took all of our, I guess, highly valuable things with us in the 2 cars, just because a lot of that stuff we wanted to have with us while the pod was waiting to be picked up. So we threw the motorcycle on the back of the truck, threw the bicycles in there, the generator, all the stuff that we kind of wanted to have with us. And then obviously we hitched up the trailer and started making our way southwest. So I was doing the math, and on our truck, we were probably within 100 or so pounds within the maximum capacity of the truck, but I think we were still within the legal limits. So
it towed pretty well, though, didn't it?
Oh, it towed great. It towed great. So the biggest takeaway from our move, I guess, is that everything went super smoothly. My biggest fear was that we would get a flat tire on the side of the road or somewhere, or we would get lost, which I guess is kind of hard to do nowadays with GPS. But I guess separated from each other, or something went wrong with the RV along the way when you have to stop somewhere in a shop and fix it. But none of that happened, so everything went great. And most importantly, neither of us got into an accident or any kind of other incident. There were a couple of times where
it was close.
It was close. Some of those interchanges, I don't know what those designers were thinking. It's hard to get an RV to go from 75 to 25 and into a hairpin turn within 50 feet.
And those on-ramps were super short. I don't know how you can get up to speed that fast.
Yeah.
It was tough even in my faster car.
Yep. So Jackie and Lucy were in front in our sedan, and then I was right behind them with the Tundra and the RV for most of the time. So we had walkie-talkies, we could talk to each other, And obviously
that's kind of
phones.
nice, because then if I wanted to, stop for a quick snack or something, all I did is let them know, and we were
Pulled over.
Pulled over.
Yep, not a big deal at all. So after we left Sheboygan, that was on a Saturday. We didn't really want to drive that much on the first day, just because we were wrapping stuff up at our old place still in the morning. So we just kind of wanted to take it easy. So the natural place for us was right outside of Omro, Wisconsin, which is where Jackie's parents live. There's a very nice campground, probably maybe 15 minutes away from there. So that was probably maybe an hour and a half drive. It's pretty much right on the direction that we needed to go anyway, which is west and southwest. So that worked out really well. So we stayed there for 2 nights. The campground is called Eureka Dam. And it's called Eureka Dam because there is a dam and a boat lock right next door on the Omro River. So definitely a great place to go if you like fishing. There are people fishing there all the time just because of the dam and the locks. I guess fish are known to be good biters over there. So we walked around for a little bit. We spent some time with Jackie's parents, just kind of settling into the RV, moving things around now that we were kind of on our way. So that was a good first stop. The owners were super nice, very friendly.
I like them coming over to chat with us.
Yeah, you could tell that, they really enjoyed what they did, and they really cared about the people that stayed at their campground. So that was really cool. I think most of the people that were at that campground were kind of long-termers. You could tell that some of the RVs were settled in pretty well. Some of them had wood decks leading out of their doors, which is always a sign that, they plan to be there for a while. So, but overall it was really nice. The one thing, we were always looking for full hookup places along our way, just because we didn't want to have to deal with, a central dump when we were already wanting to get on the road. And the other thing was we were always looking for pull-through sites because those are always easier to get in and out of in the morning when we're ready to hit the road. So that was kind of our criteria, is full hookups and pull-throughs, and good reviews. Obviously, we use RV Trip Wizard to kind of let us know this is how far you can go in one day. It's a really nice site. You can plug in your mileage, what the average gas mileage that you expect to get with your truck while you're towing, and how long you want to be on the road each day, and how many hours, I guess, and how many miles you want to be on the road each day. And it basically calculates it out for you. It says, if this was your spot last night, this is where you're trying to go. This is kind of your radius of how far you can go that day. So we try to keep the driving under 6 hours every day. Just because we knew that we would have to set up each night and break down each morning, so that kind of eats into your time a little bit. That's a couple hours each day. And then we just didn't want to drive anymore because we knew that we'd be tired. At the end of the day, we'd just be ready to kind of settle down for the night. So we could have done more. We could have gotten here faster, but I feel like, going slow and steady is probably good when you're towing a big
Yeah, it was
trailer
nice to
behind you.
take a couple hours after we got here to relax too. Watch some TV, read a book.
Yeah, just kind of unwind
Dinner.
for the night and recharge the batteries a little bit. So that was really nice. So with Eureka Dam, there was full hookups, everything except for sewer. They have a central dump, but they have water and electric at each site. So we chose not to dump at their dump just because I think it was an additional $10 to use the dump. And we knew that we were going to a campground with full hookups next, so we just kind of hauled all of our stuff with us to the next site. So this is for the B-roll, because I have a very acute condition called CRS, which stands for can't remember stuff. So we have this logbook, which basically lets us log each place that we've been to with our camper.
I seem to be the only one filling it out, though.
I remember I filled it out a few times,
Once.
so it's a shared effort. But it basically lets us know everything from what were the hookups at this site, what were the what was the area like, what can you do, how was the cell service. You can write all this stuff online, but I just feel like you can never beat a good book. So
It's kind of nice though if you grab a good site, you know, then you know which site you had last time.
yeah,
Although I don't think we're going to be driving through these places again.
probably not, but you never know. So we were in site number 3 at Eureka Dam, which was very close to the entrance. The other thing that I remember about that campground is you are surrounded by water everywhere. There was a bog, kind of a marsh on one side.
There was bugs.
And that meant that there was a lot of bugs. It rained almost every day while we were traveling, which was a lot of fun to set up and tear down. I had a little bit of an issue halfway through because I just said
He wanted
sick
to
of.
become interior.
Yeah, I wanted to switch and become interior from exterior because I was tired of being wet and muggy and sweaty all the time. So, but I got over that. So I think that's it for Eureka Dam. It was a very nice campground. We got to say goodbye to Jackie's parents, which was really nice. Spend some time with them, and then we headed down to Iowa. So the next place we stopped at was right outside of Cedar Rapids, which was a bigger city than I expected. But I guess now that I read up on it, it's the second biggest city in Iowa. So we should have kind of expected it, but. From the reviews, it was basically what everybody said. It's a very, very nice county campground. It's probably the nicest.
It was the nicest one that I've ever stayed at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we pulled in there and we thought that it was somebody set it up private and was trying to make money off of it because everything was immaculate. The grass was short. Everything worked perfectly. You know, the sites were spaced out far and wide away from each other. And usually when you get some county or state or whatever campgrounds, they just try to cram as many people into one area as they can to try and make more money. But that was not the case here. So that was a really nice campground. So half of the campground is reservable ahead of time. So they put you in one loop if you reserved ahead of time. And then the other loop, which is actually much bigger than the reservable loop, is basically just first come, first serve. And it was full.
It was, yeah.
We were kind of surprised because that was a Monday night and just the middle of a random week, not a holiday weekend or anything, and there were probably just a couple of spots left in the first come first serve loop, and maybe a third of the sites that are reservable were empty. So that was kind of surprising, but I think we could kind of see the appeal. It's very close. I mean, you go 2 miles away from the campground, which is woods and forest, and there's a stream, no traffic, no noise, and you are in the middle of Cedar Rapids. And I mean, like 5-lane highways, one direction.
There's a mall.
There's a mall. There's everything you could ever think of that you would need while you're camping or RVing or just stopping through town. So that was very convenient. So we liked that one a lot. That one was full hookups. See my cheat sheet here.
I think that one was my favorite one of the of the trip. Oh, okay. Dog.
Lucy is done.
She sees a.
Yep, she likes chasing the geckos.
Gecko.
That's her new thing here in Arizona. Is whenever she sees a gecko, she's all over it.
And there seems to always be one running around our underneath our trailer.
Yeah, we'll have to roll that into the
Yeah.
clip to let you guys see how excited she gets. So we stayed at the campsite 21A while we were there, and like I said, it was full hookups.
It was a nice pull through.
Very very level concrete pad.
But the picnic table was huge. It could probably fit like 8 or 10 people on it. And then there was like a huge area, like for what I liked was the fire. We didn't use the fire pit because we didn't have time, but there was a fire pit and it had like stone around it, is what I can remember.
Yep. I mean, you could tell that a lot of care and thought went into designing that campground. So we were just surprised because we've never seen a quote unquote government campground of that quality. So that was really nice. And like I said, everything is close by. You know, whatever you want to eat, if you want to grab a bite to eat, if you're sick of, making food in your RV.
If you don't mind the traffic.
If you don't mind the traffic, they have everything that you would ever need.
Taking a left turn out of that park was a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Drivers in big cities, they don't care that you're towing an RV. They just want to get around you. So, yeah, we try to stay away from the bigger cities as much as possible, or at least kind of stay on the outskirts like we did here. So next up, after we left Cedar Rapids, was we drove through the majority of Iowa, which, by the way, side note, I found much more hilly than I expected.
I loved Iowa. It's beautiful.
Very scenic. A lot of rolling hills, so the I would say hills slash very small mountains. So the Tundra definitely got a workout towing the RV. So, but never overheated once. We never had any issues. So that was a good test before we got into the Rockies, just to see how well it would behave, and it was rock solid. So that was really nice. So we drove through the majority of Iowa. We kind of dipped into Missouri just a little bit, the very north corner of Missouri, and that's where we stayed for the night. It was basically right on the Kansas and Missouri border. If we would have gone right over the river at the campground, we would have been in Kansas. So that one was about 20 minutes north of Kansas City. So again, we try to stay kind of close to a bigger city, but not anywhere where we would have to deal with the traffic. So this was a state park called Weston Bend State Park in, creatively enough, Weston, Missouri. So they must have had some very heavy rains right before we got there. When we were pulling through the campground, you could tell that everything was just saturated with water. We picked a site, kind of sight unseen at this park. They didn't have any pictures on the website, so we were just kind of hoping that we would get a good one. It was at the top of a very steep hill, which was nice because we didn't have to worry about any flooding or running water or anything. But the site when we got there was kind of a half moon semicircle, and the way that we would have had to pull our RV into it, we wouldn't have been able to unhitch or actually level our RV. So the rest of the campground spots kind of in that area, we were the only ones at the top of the hill, quote unquote. So there was probably 4 or 5 empty sites that night around us. So we just picked a different one. We called the park staff, the campground host, who was also very nice. He was a retired veteran and had no issues with doing that. So we picked a different one. It was actually a back end, but it was much drier and more level, and we could actually unhook the truck. So that was nice. Yeah, the next morning when we were leaving the campground, the park ranger was asking if we had seen the bear, because I guess they must have had one right in the area. So I think he was trying to track it down, make sure that it stayed away from people. So, no, it was a nice park though. Very nice campground host. That was the only campground that we stayed at which had electric only and a central dump, kind of the standard setup for a state park. The other thing about that campground was that the dump was closed. So we had brought fresh water in with us from the Iowa Cedar Rapids. So we hauled our fresh water with us that day, and then we basically hauled all of our stuff back out because we knew that the next campground that we were going to was full hookups again, so we could just use their hookups to refill our tanks, empty our tanks, and do all that stuff. So after that, we made our way through the majority of Kansas. That was pretty much the whole day was driving through Kansas, and we wound up in a tiny little town,
Kinsley,
Kansas.
It was. I liked the town. Like, it was pretty cool. It was halfway in between the whole United States.
It's the exact halfway point between, I guess, the very western part of the United States, the continental United States, and the very eastern part. So that's their claim to fame, so to speak.
They had like a tiny little grocery store, and they like brought my bags out to my car, which I've never experienced that before. It was kind of nice. Everybody in the town was super friendly. Super friendly people.
Very, very nice campground host / manager. This is a private campground. He was also a retired veteran, so he took great pride in his park. We were having some issues getting our RV level. They are on concrete pads. All the sites there are on concrete pads, which is nice. But I guess I'm kind of a stickler for getting the RV completely level. Perfectly level each time.
What are you trying to bake a cake?
So yeah, I had gone into the to the office and told them, hey, my sensor's showing that we're 3 inches off on one side, which is quite a bit to get leveled out of on a concrete pad. And then he basically he made a joke about it, which I found hilarious, but also kind of educational. He said, unless you're trying to bake a cake, it doesn't really matter. And that's true, because it's the only thing that would affect, I guess, would be the propane going into the fridge, because they're sensitive for that. But if you're running your fridge on electric, it doesn't matter. So he actually brought out a leveler to prove that the sites were level, which was kind of funny. But we kind of said it's fine, and kind of chalked it up to we were a little bit off by a couple inches that day, which is fine. So very nice park.
Had laundry, which was really nice.
We were able to do laundry in the middle of the week, which is very nice. So yeah, very nice park to stay at. Kind of in the middle of nowhere, like I said.
Just small, really old town.
Yeah. If you're
We
driving
had a couple
through,
of restaurants. But
yeah. If you're driving through that area, you might have trouble finding a place where you can get gas if you're towing an RV, just because most of the gas stations that I saw, probably for a 50-mile stretch through that part of Kansas, is they were just tiny mom and pop one or two pump shops where you had houses on either side, and you would not be able to run an RV through there. So that's something to keep in mind. We were kind of expecting that, because I planned all the stops for our gas stops ahead of time, try to stop at truck stops and bigger gas stations and things like that where our RV would fit. So we kind of knew that, and we knew that we could make it to the next rest stop, truck stop, just on what we had. So, but that is something to keep in mind. And then the next day we rode through 4 states in one day, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
We rode through Kansas, Oklahoma, the panhandle of Oklahoma, kind of the upper tip of Texas, and then into New Mexico at the very eastern border of Mexico. We had originally planned to stay at a state park that was kind of like near a lake in that area. It was a half a mile off the interstate, which would have been kind of annoying, because we would have just been wasting time getting to and from the campground. But when I was doing research on actually picking out the site and paying, they had a notice on their website saying that they have a boil water advisory at that campground at that state park, and we really didn't want to feel like dealing with that. So instead, we picked out a nice KOA right by I-40. Basically right when we rejoined the big I-40 corridor. That's where we stayed for the night. It's called Tucumcari is the town, and also the name of the KOA. It used to be on the historic Route 66, but ever since the interstate went in, I guess the town has been dying off a little bit, which is unfortunate. But the KOA itself was very nice. They just expanded recently. They put in some very big concrete pads for very big rigs. If you have a rig that's the size of a tour bus, you should have no problems staying there. They can really accommodate anybody. So one thing about that campground is it is very close to the interstate. So if you are planning to stay there, try to pick a site, or at least one of the groups that they have listed on their site that are a little bit farther away from the highway. Because not only is the interstate right there, but there's a major train line that goes through there. I think it's the train line that goes from Los Angeles all the way into the south, into Florida, and then up into the East Coast. So those trains are huge, double-decker, mile-long trains that are rolling through there. So you definitely don't want to be listening to that all night while you're trying to sleep. So it was a very nice campground, very
Beautiful
pretty
background.
scenery. Yeah. It was probably
It was my favorite.
It was probably the first time that we really got into a desert scenery, because anything.
Maybe that's why I liked it so much, getting away from Kansas. 'Cause
Yeah.
Kansas is kind of.
Up until Kansas,
Wasn't my favorite.
Up until we got down with Kansas, we basically said we could just be rolling through Wisconsin. There's really no way to tell other than the fact that there were more hills. That was really the only difference, which was kind of funny. But once we got to Tucumcari and New Mexico, the scenery changed a lot, which was very cool. So again, full hookups. Most of the sites there were pull-throughs. Campground hosts, again, were super nice. They actually lead you to your site, which is kind of nice. You don't have to get lost once you check in. So that was pretty nice of them. They do have laundry.
A pool.
Yeah,
and
like
I think all the KOAs have to have certain things.
yeah,
They had a
dog
mini
run.
golf, but like it was time.
Yeah.
Was it the mini golf or the dog run?
They have both.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
they
I think
have
they
both.
have to, but like of course they just made it just so they had one because it was tiny.
Yeah.
But
While we were there, of course, we brought the rain with us. We brought the rain into the desert.
that was muddy when we were packing up because of all the rain.
Yeah. So the joke was that the whole week we were just bringing the rain with us wherever we went.
And then we brought it here to
And then
Arizona,
we brought
too.
it here, all the
Which
way
is-
into Arizona.
They needed it, so with all the wildfires.
Yeah, yeah. So at this point, we were getting kind of excited because we knew that we were getting close. You know, we saw the mountains. You know, we knew that we were almost there. So the next day we spent driving across basically the entirety of New Mexico, which was just absolutely beautiful scenery. Going up into the mountains a little bit, so the truck was definitely working overtime. I had to slow down a couple of times to let the transmission cool off a little bit, but I never got any warnings or anything, so that was just me monitoring with one of those OBD scanners, monitoring the temperature, so I knew I had to slow down a little bit, but most of the time we were booking along at 70 or 75 miles per hour. On a side note, I'm really glad that we replaced the cheap, crappy Chinese-made tires that were on this RV with some quality American-made tires, I will say. These tires that are on there now are the Goodyear Endurance, which is, I guess, the successor to the Goodyear Marathon. And these tires are actually rated up to like 88 miles an hour, which is kind of insane for an RV trailer tire. So most RV trailer tires are rated to like 55, 60, maybe 65 miles per hour, and anything above that, you're kind of, putting yourself at risk a little bit. But yeah, we had no problems cruising along at the posted speed limit, which is 75 through all of New Mexico for most of the time. So that was an interesting day. That was probably our last major city that we had to drive through, which was Albuquerque, and that was actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Either they routed the interstate around the city, or there was just not a lot of traffic when we were running through there. So that was kind of nice. So the next place that we stopped at was USA RV Park in Gallup, New Mexico, on the other side of New Mexico, also along old Route 66. So we basically followed Route 66 and the interstate all the way through New Mexico, which is kind of cool. And again,
It was neat going through some of the old towns.
Yeah, you could tell.
You could tell that they're kind of dying out, but
yeah, a lot of history, but you could also tell that they were struggling a little bit, which was kind of sad to see, but I guess it is what it is. I know Gallup, there was a whole bunch of boarded up businesses and signs and things like that. It seemed like they were trying to revitalize it a little bit, but I don't know how much success they're going to have with that. But yeah, it was still a very nice place to stay, I think. We were ready to be done by that point. So we stayed at USA RV Park. That was another big campground. Very nice camp hosts again. They let us switch our site just because we didn't want to be right in the middle of everything. So they
we went
let
right
us.
next to the dog park.
We stayed
So
right
you
at.
could see all the dogs going by.
Yeah. So she got very excited about that. There was quite a bit of
We had a
barking
pretty,
going on.
yeah, we had a pretty view. It was nice.
Yeah. It was.
One thing that I liked about that campground is they offered, they had like a little gift shop, and then they offered food at night.
Yeah, like a full dinner.
It was pretty reasonable.
Yeah, so they had a chef that comes in and he basically cooks your dinner to order from a menu. You just tell him what you want for however many people, and then 15, 20 minutes later you get your dinner made for you, which is kind of cool. That was, I don't think I've seen that before.
It was a huge park.
Yeah, it was a very big park.
They had a pool.
Yep, it was kind of like a KOA.
Mm-hmm.
Like they basically had everything that you could have at a KOA, except it was private and a little bit more reasonable in terms of cost. It was probably half the cost of our KOA in Tucumcari. So Yeah, it was very nice.
I wasn't a huge fan of the surrounding town, but they did a good job of like tucking it away so you didn't know that you were part of the town.
Yeah, and again, you know, kind of the same concern with Tucumcari campground is you are again right next to I-40 and the very big train line that kind of follows I-40. So if you can, try to get a spot kind of that's farther away from the roads, just so you don't get as much noise. The other thing that was interesting about that campground is that it seems to be directly in the approach and departure path of the local airport. So you have airplanes buzzing your RV,
Which you enjoyed.
which
let's
I
be
enjoyed
honest.
because I'm an airplane fanatic, you could say.
Yeah, every single time a plane would go, he would stop talking.
That's
Just
what you
talk at
do.
the
You
sky.
gotta find out what kind of plane it is and where it's going and see the flight path and all that good stuff. So
Most people would not like that, but
I enjoyed it.
yeah, I don't mind it either.
Yeah, the nice thing about that airport is they do seem to have quiet hours. So I think between like 10 and 6, we didn't hear any
Yeah,
planes.
but right at like 6:30 or
6:30, there were probably 5 planes.
But we were
going
getting
out.
up early anyway, so
Yeah.
that didn't.
But
the time change.
that is something to be aware of if you do decide to stay there, is you will probably hear some airplanes because there's no way to get away from them if you're staying at that park. So the next day we packed up from Gallup and headed into Arizona, along I-40 again, all the way into Flagstaff.
Some of those roads were, to me, scary because you were doing a lot of twisty turns, and it was like a 2-lane highway, and people were whizzing by me because I was going too slow, and trucks are passing.
Yeah. The interstate going up into Flagstaff was probably the hardest that the truck had to work to get up into Flag, just because the elevation of there is, I think, 7,000 feet or a little bit over. And when we were in Gallup, we were at, I think, 4,000 feet, so we gained 3,000 feet. I think it was in like an hour. So that's quite a change, and it definitely was working hard. But again, no problems. And then, yeah, like you said, as soon as we made our way up to the Flag Mountains, we came right back down from the Flag Mountains, headed south into Cottonwood. So,
Beat the sun.
yeah. So yeah, the roads going south from Flag are a little bit scary. There's a lot of windy,
But it was
twisties,
so beautiful.
But it's absolutely
But I was trying
gorgeous.
to keep my eyes on the road.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
So it's definitely worth the drive if you're ever in the area. Flag is a nice city. It's a little bit too big for us, but they definitely have everything that you could ever need there. So it's a good stopover. Apparently it's a location where a lot of athletes train just because of the high elevation. So it's very good training for them, which is kind of an interesting fact. We saw a lot of runners and bikers that you could tell were doing some serious distance out on the roads because they were 15, 20 miles outside of town just taking a run. So they're definitely there doing their training, so that was kind of cool. So by the end of the day, we finally pulled into Camp Verde in Cottonwood, so right off the highway, and then we rolled into our permanent or semi-permanent long-term camping spot, which is here at Sedona View RV Resort. By the time that we got here, the office was closed because it was a Saturday. So we knew which site. We had pre-booked our site, I want to say like at least 3 or 4 months ago, just because we knew that we were moving here and we would have to have the RV somewhere. So that was all set up for already. We knew our RV spot. We knew exactly where we needed to be. Kathy, the manager here at the campground, is really good. She's really well organized. She lets you know exactly what's going on at all times. You know, she called us. We didn't even have to call her while we were on our way. You know, saying, "How's your drive going? You know, when do you expect to be there?" Just making sure that everything was set up for us. And you know, she was asking, you know, if we knew where to go and how to park, and she was giving us all these tips. So she's
They usually like to watch you back in the spot, especially if you have a spot like we do. We paid
Yeah.
a little bit extra to have this view, which is well worth it to have
Well
our
worth
coffee
it.
in the
Yeah.
morning.
to walk outside and, you know, have this background right when you step out of your RV is pretty amazing. So yeah, we're liking it here quite a bit so far. We're liking it a lot. It's full hookups. It's kind of a newer campground,
There's not much to do here, but
Mhm.
the scenery speaks for itself. Like if you don't need the pool, or it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
you're
really-
kind of outside of town a little bit. Probably.
Yeah, to get into town each day, it's a 15-minute drive,
Mhm.
but that can be a good thing too.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So now that we're here at Sedona View, we spent some time getting everything set up, kind of anchoring everything down, getting ready to have everything set up here for a little bit longer term than what we've been used to, you know, packing up and unpacking every day. So we got everything unpacked, we got everything unloaded from the truck, been doing a lot of paperwork, you know, getting everything registered in Arizona, new licenses, all that really fun stuff. But probably the most serious thing that is on the schedule now is going house hunting.
Finding a more permanent situation.
Yeah, this park is nice, but you know, living out
Our
of
camper's too small for the two of us.
living out of a 22-foot camper is fine, but not really a long-term solution. So that's what's been consuming all of our time recently, is kind of exploring the town,
House hunting.
getting used to everything, finding out all the cool places to hang out, doing fun
We've
stuff
done
like
some
that. Hiking.
up in Sedona, the Red Rocks, beautiful.
Yep. So that's another big draw of Cottonwood, and this area in general is the Sedona Red Rocks are just probably 20 minutes away. So that's an absolutely gorgeous area of the country. If you've never been there, highly recommend checking it out for at least a day. So try not to come on a weekend. Because,
And if you go hiking in Sedona, you have to go at 6 a.m. because
Mhm.
otherwise it's just wall-to-wall people.
yeah,
For a reason, because it's beautiful.
that's been the biggest adjustment, I think, is you know, it's probably like 9:30 in the morning right now when we're filming this, and we're creeping up into the 90s already. So we were kind of expecting that, but it's still an adjustment from Wisconsin for sure. And the whole dry heat thing has not really materialized yet because it's been
It's monsoon season, so it's raining a lot, so there's moisture in the air. So
Yeah.
it's not really a dry heat right now, but it's still better than where we were
yeah.
because we were right by Lake Michigan, so it was like the humidity was always near 100.
One thing I will say is that one, the storms here are very intense from the monsoon season. Very intense, but very cool to watch at the same time. And they're usually over within 30 minutes. So, I mean, for 90% of every day, even during monsoon season, it's sunny. It's just sunny and nice. So that's pretty amazing. So definitely look for a more detailed review of the resort where we're staying at. Once we've been here a little bit longer, we'll post that up onto the website, onto the channel, just with our thoughts. Maybe get some drone footage, things like that, and maybe some more pictures and videos of the town too. So I will mention one more thing, is if you are planning to or want to stay in the Cottonwood area with your RV, there is along with 3 or 4 private RV parks that are kind of spread out all over town. There is also a 1,000 Trails campground that's basically just a couple miles away from us, which is huge.
Yeah.
Kind of what you would expect from 1,000 Trails. The reason why we are not staying there is because the cell reception is supposed to be pretty abysmal. So if you're somebody that needs to be connected to the internet for remote work or whatever it is that you're doing, uploading YouTube videos, that's something to definitely consider. I guess I will say that the cell reception and Wi-Fi and everything here are really, really good. So
Because there's a cell tower just on the other side of the park.
yeah, so that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at RV places around town. Like we said, much more to come soon. I know this is kind of a longer video than usual, but there's been a lot of things happening in the last month and a half. So thank you guys very much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.